different ages, different genders, different levels of fitness, and different mindsets to compete as a team in a contest of swimming, biking, and running. Some of the contests reminded me of scenes from Vietnam, where team members were carrying other team members across the finish line. Of course, to be a real business school, we bet money. Every participant put money in the pot, and it was winner take all. A winning team of 15 could walk away with as much as $50,000 in prize money. At our business school for investors, instead of talking about investing, we actually would build a stock market trading floor. The different teams would represent different stocks and money managers. As market conditions changed, the teams had to adjust their investment strategies. Again, at the end of the school, the winning team walked away with the money. In 1993, although the business was successful and profitable, I knew it was once again time to move on. In the summer of 1994, Kim and I sold our share of the business to our partner and retired. The passive income generated from our investments was now greater than our expenses. We were finally out of the rat race. We weren't rich, but we were financially free. In my book, Rich Dads Retire Young, Retire Rich, you will see on the back cover a picture of Kim and me sitting on horses on a hill overlooking a crystal blue ocean. That vacation on a private island in Fiji was our reward for retiring early. Kim was 37, and I was 47. Know when to stop. In his book, Good to Great, Jim Collins does a whole piece on knowing when to stop. Reading his book in 2004 took me back to the times when I also stopped in 1984 and 1994. There was no clear signal, no sign from God saying it's time to stop. Each time, there was simply a moment when I knew the process I was in had come to an end. It was time to stop and wait for the beginning of the next process. Many times I meet business people who want to stop but can't stop. They cannot stop for different reasons. One common reason is that their BI triangle is weak. To cover up for the weaknesses, the owner often has to work harder or longer to make up for the weaknesses. Another reason is that the owner cannot afford to stop. Again, this is a symptom of a weakness in the BI triangle. Another common reason is that the owner, although successful, continues to work because he or she does not know what to do next. According to Jim Collins, a person may need to stop first, take some time off, and then look for the next thing. That is what I did. I simply stopped, let the dust settle, and waited a few years to see what would happen next. The more people you serve, the more effective you become. From 1984 to 1994, I was firmly entrenched in the S quadrant. I was not going to make any premature moves toward the B quadrant. As expected, as our success grew, so did our exhaustion. Exhaustion is what often occurs with successful people in the S quadrant. Since an S individual often does the work himself, more success means more work. An S often works for a $1 per hour compensation plan, and as we all know, there are only so many hours in a day. When Kim and I stopped, it was not the hard work or long hours that caused us to stop. What was disturbing me was how few people our work was reaching. After all, only a few people actually pay money to attend seminars, and our seminars were not only expensive, but also tough like the Marine Corps. We asked people to devote 10 or more days to attend one of our business schools. Dr. Buckminster Fuller, the teacher who has had a tremendous influence on my life, often said, "The more people you serve, the more effective you become." He was not into money, but he was into being of service. Rich Dad said, "One of the big differences between an S and a B is the number of customers they can handle." He also said, "If you want to be rich, simply serve more people." By 1994, our last business school had over 350 people in the class paying $5,000 each to attend. If you do the math, the money was good. What was not good was that there were only 350 people. I knew that if I truly wanted to help those kids in Asia, I was not going to be able to do it doing things the way I was doing them. In other words, I knew it was time to stop and figure out how to go from the S quadrant to the B quadrant. Instead of trying to leap across the Grand Canyon, Kim and I were now ready to climb up the other side. It was time to go through what Rich Dad called the eye of the needle. Going through the eye of the needle. As most of you know, one of the problems with being self-employed in the S quadrant is the word self. In many cases, the self-employed person is the product, the person who is hired to do the work. When you look at the BI triangle, starting from the cash flow level on up to product, the self-employed person is in charge of everything, all the elements. In most cases, being self-employed makes it very difficult to get to the B quadrant. It can be difficult to get yourself out of the way. Between 1984 and 1994, I was that person. I was the self in self-employed. Although I did it intentionally, the reality disturbed me. A question I often asked myself was, how can I teach people what I have been teaching in our business schools without my personally teaching them? We tried training other instructors, but that process was a long, hard, tedious process. It was difficult to find people to go through the training process to become instructors. It was hard to teach other people to teach the way we taught. It's not easy to get a class of over 300 people to learn accounting and investing in one day. It was almost as tough as teaching them to walk across fire. After selling the business in 1994, I had time to go back to my question. How can I teach people what I have been teaching in our business schools without my teaching them? I moved into the mountains near Bisbee, Arizona, and was secluded enough to begin working on the answer to my question. For 2 years, I worked on the question. When I left Bisbee, I had the rough draft for Rich Dad, Poor Dad on my Macintosh computer and a rough sketch with computations for the cash flow board game. I was going through the eye of the needle and moving from the S quadrant to the B quadrant. Rich Dad had learned about the eye of the needle from Sunday school. He said, a popular Bible verse goes something like this: "It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to pass into heaven." Rich Dad continued, modifying the verse to say, "Forget the camel. If a man can pass through the eye of a needle, he will enter a world of tremendous wealth." Now, Rich Dad was a very religious man and was not making fun of the verse. He was simply modifying it to create his own lesson. In business terms, what he meant was that for an entrepreneur to pass through the eye of a needle, the entrepreneur has to leave himself behind. What passes through the eye of the needle is the entrepreneur's idea or intellectual property. There are many examples of entrepreneurs going through the eye of the needle throughout history. Here are a few. When Henry Ford designed his automobile to be mass-produced, he passed through the eye of the needle. Up until then, most cars were custom-ordered and handmade. When Steve Jobs and his team at Apple created the iPod, the iPad, the iPhone, and iTunes, they went through the eye of the needle. When someone like Steven Spielberg or George Lucas creates a movie, they too go through the eye of the needle. McDonald's went through the eye of the needle by franchising their hamburger business worldwide. When a network marketer builds a downline of other business owners, he or she goes through the eye of the needle. When investors buy an asset, such as an apartment house that cash flows money into their pocket each and every month, they have gone through the eye of the needle. A politician who uses the media to campaign is going through the eye of the needle. A politician who goes door to door is not. When inventors or authors sell their invention or their book to a large company, which in return pays them royalties, They have gone through the eye of the needle. When I took what I had learned from Rich Dad and created the board game and wrote the book, I was going through the eye of the needle. I was getting myself out of the equation. When I created my nylon shoe pocket wallet for runners and did not first have my idea protected by an intellectual property attorney, I was not going through the eye of the needle. I was simply giving my idea to my competition and making them rich. They went through the eye of the needle, and I fell into the Grand Canyon. I had a great new product, but without the legal level to protect my product, the BI triangle was not complete. The chick breaks through its shell. When I returned to Phoenix with a draft of the book and the cash flow board game in hand, I knew I was making my move to the B quadrant. Kim and I began to design and build a company according to the BI triangle. The moment we put our products in the marketplace, the heavens of abundance opened up. The product line was officially unveiled on my 50th birthday, April 8, 1997. From the start of the Rich Dad Company, we had a few struggles to breathe life into the business. The main struggles we had were keeping up with demand, traveling the world to open new markets, and counting the money. In June 2000, the call from the Oprah Winfrey Show came, and the heavens really opened. Kim and I were leaping from S to B. At this point, I began to better understand what Rich Dad meant by being true to the process. The process will give you glimpses of a better future, just to keep you going. The power of mastering the BI triangle. Harnessing the power of the 3 types of money,